All right. Aloha, kakahiaka kako, and hau'oli makahiki ho. Good morning and happy New Year's to everyone. Mahalo for joining us on Hawaii Care Choices, very first healthcare talk story of 2023. I cannot believe it. I'm Tish Lopez, your moderator this morning. Happy beautiful Aloha Tuesday. And a bit chilly. It looks like we still have a little bit of snow up on the Mauna, so that's always nice. Just a friendly reminder, today's talk story is being recorded so that you and others may access it in the future. All of our presentations are available on our YouTube channel simply by searching Hawaii Care Choices. We are also on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Please follow us to see a ton of content, upcoming events, just like Healthcare Talk Story. Get to know our team, our supportive community members, and hear our patient stories. If you are following us, please send Lonnie and I a comment, a heart, maybe even a shaka. We would be so excited to connect with you on there as well. For those of you joining us on Zoom, the bottom of your screen should look like this. Please click on the chat box and say aloha and wish everyone a hau'oli makahiki ho, or happy new year. Today's talk story will be diving in and to find out ways to reclaim the normalcy of daily living, or daily life while living with serious illness. You may ask questions throughout the presentation by clicking on that Q&A box right at the bottom at any time to submit our questions to Lonnie or to Dr. Hannah. To those of you watching on Facebook Live, mahalo for joining us and aloha. Please use your comment box to say aloha and let us know where you are joining in from. Also, feel free to shout out Happy New Year to everyone. Your questions can be put right in that comment box and I will see them. And we would also love to see hearts and thumbs up, even the care button, or feel free to share the video with your friends. We are also doing polls today. For those of you on Facebook Live, you will not be able to see the polls pop up, but we still want to hear from you. Please enter your answer right there in that comment box. Everyone is welcome to join in the fully engaged Zoom presentation next month just by emailing lopez@hawaiicarechoices.org or visiting our website, www.hawaiicarechoices.org, and the tab for events and talk story. Now, polling is very simple. A brain teaser bell will ring and the question will pop up similar to what you see here on the screen. Make the selection you think is best and hit the submit button below. Just to kick things off, I'm going to go ahead and do an icebreaker. All right, question up on your screen is, how was your New Year's celebration? Was it a quiet evening inside, a loud, explosive evening outside, or full of traditions for good fortune in 2023? Just want to hear from you. Feel free to click on that answer and click the submit button below. Those on Facebook Live, go ahead and send me your comments. What was your New Year's celebration look like? All right, I'm gonna head and end the poll right here and share the results. So it looks like 50% had a quiet evening inside, 33% was loud and explosive evening outside, and 17% said full of traditions for good fortune in 2023. That is so awesome. Thank you so much, friends, for participating in our polls. Go ahead and okay, I'm also your IT support, so I apologize for the extra bell ring. But thank you so much for joining in. Today, I'd like to welcome our guest speakers. Joining us this morning is Dr. Hannah Preston-Pita, Cheif Executive Officer and the Clinical Psychologist at Big Island Substance Abuse Council and Hawaii Island Health and Wellness Center based in Kea'au. Aloha, Dr. Hannah.
Aloha kako, everyone.
Next, I'd like to introduce Lonnie Weigert, who is striving to raise the awareness about palliative and hospice care and even bereavement care in hopes to provide a world-class healthcare choices and solutions for all. Aloha, Lonnie.
Aloha and happy Tuesday to everyone as well. Welcome.
This morning, Lonnie and Dr. Hannah will talk story about palliative care, and Dr. Hannah will explain how serious illness can create major life changes in a person's life. She will share ways a patient and caregivers can be empowered to reclaim the normalcy in their daily lives. All right, friends, I am so excited for all of you to be here on Healthcare Talk Story in 2023. Please give a warm virtual round of applause for Lonnie Weigert as she shares the secrets of palliative care. Aloha, Lonnie.
Aloha. Mahalo, Tish. That was wonderful. Thank you so much. And I'm really excited that Dr. Hannah is joining us because part of palliative care is the psychosocial side. And oftentimes that's kind of the invisible or silent guest in the room. We don't normally ever talk about that part, the mental health part, and how it actually affects our overall well-being, particularly in the area of palliative care. So I look forward to a very engaging discussion that we're going to have as we wrap ourselves right around our palliative care. So for many people, oftentimes they don't realize there is something such as palliative care. Most of the doctors don't talk about it. It's considered specialized care, just like if you went to a cardiologist or your oncologist. It really focuses on relief of symptoms that you're having, largely because of treatments that are being provided to a patient. And oftentimes without palliative care, it's really difficult to boost the quality of life for the patient as well as the caregiver. And for those living with serious illness, this is a really critical type of care that would make a tremendous difference. And my feeling is that with a perfect team of just the registered nurse, the licensed social worker, and the nurse practitioner coming in, it's a very small yet mighty team, and it can be provided to anyone of any age, even babies.
Mahalo, Lonnie. Dr. Hannah, I do have a question as we get right to it. Is it more likely to have or develop depression due to chronic pain and or maybe a lifestyle cutback from normal activities while living with a serious illness, maybe such as cancer or lung, maybe heart disease?
Yes, very definitely. So chronic illnesses and things like serious illnesses that you had mentioned causes more individuals to really develop depression. And in other cases, depression can really aggravate the illnesses, causing things like pain, individuals being more tired or fatigued, more social isolation, working on the self-esteem. You'll start to see differences there, which supports the criteria for meeting a depression diagnosis. So as a psychologist, when we're diagnosing depression, it's the things that we start to look for is whether or not sleep is impacted, is there weight loss, is there a change in their activity, is there self-esteem issues, are they feeling guilty? And also noting that lots of the research that we've seen shows the intersection between mental health and chronic illnesses. They are not isolated. And really the interesting thing to note is that traditionally, in the past, what we've seen is that these two things are really treated in silos. So they haven't been seen in places where, mental illness is treated one way, chronic illness. But more recently, we have seen and research and experience has supported that it's always better to treat it together.
Wow, thank you so much for that awesome insight. Back to you, Lonnie.
I think that's really great is Dr. Hannah just will be elevating our awareness, and the fact that she mentioned that chronic illness or serious illness and mental illness has typically been dealt with separately in silos, and how we could be making some really positive change by ramping up that awareness and letting people know that it's actually best if we treat them together. And in fact, that's what we do with palliative care. So Oh, that was a great comment. So why I say that palliative care is a secret is because oftentimes the primary care physician may not even bring up that there is this type of program called palliative care. And if the patient or the caregiver doesn't bring it up, it may not come up. And so it's really important, particularly if somebody is dealing with a serious illness. Early sign up on this kind of program is key to really enjoying and continuing to live a quality life. And oftentimes we are getting people at the very end of their illness where at that point it's so difficult for us to even provide support for the caregiver. And so it's important to understand that for us on our team with regard to palliative care, our focus is really going to be on the person overall. The physician's role is really to deal with and fight the disease itself, but we're looking at the overall person and their well-being. And that's why it's so important for us to educate not only the patient, but the families as well, so they will know what to expect and understand about the disease that they are dealing with as well.
Dr. Hannah, I know we talked about a little bit of the physical changes that we typically look for. Are there any others that you can, any other symptoms that you can tell us that we should be aware of? And then what is the best way to treat the depression or anxiety or the mental health?
When you think about it, the majority of the symptoms that are really pronounced, obviously, is a physical symptom. So I'll just kind of go over some of the physical symptoms that we see. So it's the fatigue, things that inactivity or isolation from others could be seen. But we're looking at things that are more underlying and that are more hidden. It's things like their self-esteem that's definitely impacted. Obviously, when you think about it, what's expected is when you get a diagnosis, the severeness of it, any human being would have a difficulty with, taking that in and accepting that. So the normal sort of response to that is, they're shocked, they tend to isolate, starting to feel helpless, hopeless. And what we're seeing too is that depression and chronic illness really feed off of each other in the worst way. So because they're both interconnected, there is obviously like a bi-directional relationship between depression and chronic illness. When one is impacted, the other is exacerbated. So for instance, if it's the chronic pain, you have depression, the depression could really, really impact someone's chronic pain issues or chronic illness, or the chronic illness obviously could exacerbate the depression. So depression and anxiety, when you think about it, we say depression, but anxiety, the way that I like to describe that is anxiety is another symptom of really depression. It's more of an outward symptom of depression where they could be anxious and things are not going well. So it is really a vicious cycle that seems impossible to escape. And really thinking along the lines of depression, losing interest or pleasure in daily activities, or having these types of things, it's a very difficult thing to deal with.
Absolutely. I couldn't imagine. Dr. Hannah, what are some of the best ways that someone can treat the depression?
Oh, very interesting. So we don't like to hear the word medication, but we think about research. Psychotherapy is really good. So seeing a counselor, seeing a therapist, someone who's able to, sometimes even case managers are very well equipped to help out with that. But when we think about success, majority of the time, medication in combination with psychotherapy works extremely well.
Oh, that is so great to hear. Thank you so much, Dr. Hannah. Back to you, Lonnie.
I just wanted to add a little comment with regard to what Dr. Hannah said with anxiety. We find that when our patients are anxious, largely because they don't know, they're not aware of, okay, well, there'll be times where it'll be difficult for you to breathe, et cetera. This is what we need you to do. We find that once the patient and caregiver start to receive the education, they are able to some degree, ease off a little on the anxiety. The kinds of behavior that we see when people are quite anxious is that they'll start to call the ambulance. They'll be calling 911 a lot, and I mean, it actually costs them a lot to be doing that, because they'll take the ambulance to the ER, or they'll be calling or visiting their primary care physician a lot more than they even need to. And it's because they feel anxious about what's happening to them. And largely it's because they don't know. And so it's really important to understand, within our palliative care team, our social worker really helps guide people to ways of dealing with their depression as well as their anxiety. And that is key with regard to having our team members, particularly social work and spiritual counseling, to come in where needed to really ease those two mental health issues as well. And like Dr. Hannah was saying, we're dealing with it, or most of the time, it's being dealt with separately, the chronic illness as well as these mental illness. And if dealt together, how much more of a game changer that would be. The types of serious illnesses that we are referring to are cancer, any type, congestive heart failure, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, also known as COPD, kidney and renal disease, and lung disease. And normally by the time we get to serve these patients, they're in an advanced stage. So my word and message to everyone that's on here, if you know of someone that's dealing with any of these serious illnesses, please, early intervention is the best with regard to us trying to help them cope and deal with living with these serious illnesses, and still trying to affect the most best and highest quality of life that they can. And oftentimes, without palliative care, they don't realize how much of their daily activities are being affected, as well as their quality of life. And just like Dr. Hannah was saying about the isolation, it happens both ways, meaning when somebody is dealing with cancer, let's say, and doesn't want to now socialize, it also happens to those who would normally come to visit them. They think, oh no, he or she is dealing with a serious illness. We need to leave them alone for now while they deal with that. But sadly, it actually has the opposite effect. And so, really educating people on all of these different facets will really help ease some of the strain, not only for the patient, but for the family and the caregivers as well.
Thanks, Lonnie, for mentioning that caregiver. Dr. Hannah, I want to shift our thoughts to the caregiver, because we know there's a lot of support around the patient. But as the caregiver, how does one's attitude and maybe outlook affect the person that they're caring for?
You know what? That is a very difficult question to answer, but I think the best way to answer it is really looking at maybe rephrasing the question, because we know that it will impact. The question remains is, how can we support the caregiver? Majority of what I see in my end to it, it's not only the individual who has the illness, but it's also the caregiver who is undergoing some difficult and challenging situations, because they're having to really redefine their roles. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it may be where maybe mom took care of them, and now the role reversal, and they're taking care of mom. So we must honor that, assuming this role is very difficult, and really supporting them in ways that can help them understand that they may be experiencing things like burnout and depression as well.
Is there some tips maybe that we can help the caregiver to maintain a positive outlook and maybe a balance for some self-care?
Well, I think it's really understanding that, mentioning earlier with Lonnie is, Hawaii Care Choices has amazing, I refer clients there. that are dealing with grief and loss, or, even caregivers who are experiencing some of these things. But one of the things that we encourage them to do is always stay engaged and incorporate some sort of, self-care into their life. Because if they're not able to care for themselves, obviously it's going to be very difficult to care for their loved ones. So really taking that time to do that. And sometimes when we think about self-care is seen as something that's, a luxury. It's not. It's something that should be, it should be done on a daily basis. You should be able to implement that in your life, especially for the caregivers, making sure that they're able to set aside time or carve out time to maintain that balance.
Thank you so much for mentioning that. Yes, I think that self-care is so hard for everyone to say, I need to take some time to myself, but it's definitely needed so that we don't burn out, we don't have any other symptoms, and caring for somebody can be very exhausting. So no, if you're a caregiver on this call, please take some time. Self-care is not selfish. It's really just filling your cup so that you could pour into somebody else's life as well. Now we have another poll. We have a brain teaser coming up on your screen. Our question: early patient sign up ensures more support and quality of life for all. If you feel that is true or false, please just click the answer you feel and click submit. Again, if you are watching on Facebook Live, mahalo for joining us. You will not be able to see the polls pop up, but we definitely want to hear from you. Feel free to put your answers right into that comment box. If you think early patient sign up ensures more support and quality of life for all, let me know, true or false. I'm going to go ahead and end the polling on Zoom and share the results. So 100% of you said true. Early patient sign up ensures more support and quality of life for all. Absolutely. Thank you so much in engaging in our polls. I'm going to go ahead and give it back to Lonnie.
All right, thank you. And when we think of palliative care, like what are some of the benefits? One of the best benefit of all is that it actually puts the patient in control. Meaning, we had somebody that we had on Talk Story, and she was sharing that at the age of 21, she was diagnosed with cervical cancer, and she had just gotten married as well. So she was a newlywed. And when she was diagnosed, immediately the C word of cancer, it was so difficult for her to even hear anything else that they were saying. But immediately the oncologist started to schedule her for surgery, and was directly going after treating the disease. But what happened is she really was quite frightened. Her newlywed husband was totally thrown for a loop. Like, what is his role now? All of these different things that were hitting them from all sides. And she just happened across a palliative care social worker who started to ask her some questions, because she explained to the oncologist, wait, hold off on the surgery right now, because I really don't know like what my options are. And at that time, the oncologist didn't give her any other options other than, let's just cut this out and we'll be good. Well, what happened is when she came across the palliative care social worker, the questions that were asked of her was more about what are your goals of what is your life goals. And, none of it had to do with medical things. I mean, her life goals were, she was an avid cyclist. She liked to, ride in marathons. I mean, like that was something that really made her heart sing. And so in looking at the different options of what she was going to deal with now with the cervical cancer, it was very clear that if she was to do this surgery, she probably wasn't going to be able to ride her bike again. Now, can you imagine? None of that is being discussed when the oncologist is booking the surgery. And it's because that's not what the doctors are focusing on. Where with palliative care, that is primarily where we're going to focus, is what is important to the patient. And right there, other options were provided to her, and she was able to make the decision that was best for her and her husband, as well as what she was able to maintain of the quality of her life going forward. Again, without palliative care, and this type of care is not widely discussed, which is why it's so important for us to never give up going out and educating people about it, because it comes down to, based on a person's life goals, everything else with regard to the plan of care and everything else that goes on with the type of treatments somebody gets, etc., is directly linked to that. That is the foundation of compassionate care. And without palliative care, would that even come to the forefront? So it's really, really important to understand why palliative care puts the patient in control.
Thank you so much, Lonnie. Dr. Hannah, I do have a question. As Lonnie was mentioning, having the patient in control and kind of this holistic approach to care that other places may not be, physical and mental health support may be working in silos, as you mentioned. Do you feel that this combined approach, including mental health and physical health together, result in a better outcome for those dealing with depression and serious illness?
Yes, most definitely when resources are available. When we think about having a multidisciplinary team, such as physicians, that clear example that Lonnie talked about is like having these two separate discussions, but when they're able to work together, you have the doctor, the nurse, social workers, therapists, providing more of the integrative care. It really normalizes and takes away the stigma of mental health treatment. I think it also ensures that, all health needs are addressed. So it's not only the physical things that are going on, but it's also, for instance, the caseworker could be helping them navigate the system, because that could be frustrating in itself, and really leading to better treatment outcomes and quality of care when we're able to sort of work together on a multidisciplinary approach.
Right. Thank you so much for that input. Go ahead, back to you, Lonnie.
So part of the palliative care umbrella is a subset called hospice care. And hospice care is probably the Cadillac of end-of-life services. I mean, for sure. A lot of times people will say, well, my doctor recommended palliative care. Understand there's different parts of palliative care. Once somebody transitions to a need for a higher level of care, hospice care can come in, and it is significantly different than palliative care. Yes, it's treating people to the point where we're trying to provide relief for the patient, but there's a whole suite of services that come in to not only provide education, but to provide actual support in the home for the patient, family, and caregiver. And when people are in need of a higher level of care, that's when it's so critical to have a social worker as well as a spiritual counselor as part of the team, because they can help people understand, like, okay, these are your choices, these are coming up. Let's take a look at this is how you see it, this is how I see it. What do you think is the direction that we need to go into now? And a lot of times, without that kind of active collaboration, planning, and initiation, patients don't know that they are needing a higher level of care, and they actually don't receive it because they don't ask for it, and they just don't realize that they could get it. And with hospice care, there's volunteer support as well. And a lot of times people would say, particularly a lot of the local families, they'll say, oh no, we don't need any volunteer support. I can take care of my husband. I don't need anybody to come in and help. But it really isn't about making somebody feel shame or less. It's all about trying to help people do the self-care part, which is you need rest, or maybe, you want to go clean the yard. Maybe you need to go Walmart. Maybe you got to go to the bank. Like, let us create that space so that the caregiver can actually take that time. And, Dr. Hannah, can you tell me, why do you feel people feel so guilty about self-care? Do you think it's cultural?
Oh, I think it's a myriad of a lot of things, and yes, culture, because we do have, when you think about local culture too, right? It's like, what are we gonna do that for? It costs money, all of those kinds of things come up, but I think it is culture, and I think it's something that society has put into place where it's a selfish thing to do.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's something that's really necessary.
So oftentimes, you're absolutely right. Oftentimes when we call the families and we say, we can have somebody come over and, sit with your loved one while you go Helion and do your, your errands or whatever. No, initially we're met with, no, I don't need any of that kind of help. I can take care of my own husband and whatever. But, we keep pressing them. And once they say, well, okay, well, you guys, we can try it the first time. And once that happens, they realize how much of a better caregiver they are when they're able to take a break, and they're not, looking, they're not filled with so much frustration and angst because they never get the break. So it is really important when it's time to get that higher level of care. Again, earlier is better. If we know that we can come in and help a patient and family early, we certainly want to do it, because what ends up happening is, if, really, oftentimes we'll get people that contact us in the last 5 days. And although, we are able to get mom's pain under control, it's so difficult for us to try to build resiliency into the family because of the impending death that will truly happen within a few days, and the family is going to be broken into a million pieces. One of the really important things as part of the journey as we continue to care for families and patients is the Advanced Healthcare Directive. Oh my goodness, there couldn't be a better gift to a family member by just doing the Advanced Healthcare Directive, which is free. And our friends here at Community First Hawaii provide these for free. And here's some of the dates that are here. And please take the contact information so that you can reach out to them and RSVP to come, because having an Advanced Healthcare Directive, what does that mean? It means you are providing direction for your family members in the event that you are unable to speak for whatever reason. So if a car accident happened yesterday and you're up at Hilo Medical Center and you're not able to tell your family, this is what I would want, they would already have the beautiful gift of an Advanced Healthcare Directive that you yourself thought of for them, and they are not fighting over the bedside. They are not arguing amongst each other out in the hall. They know what mom or dad wanted and they go with it. So I highly, highly recommend for anyone who isn't on any of our programs to please contact our very, very good, reliable friends with Hawaii, with Community First Hawaii, so that you can get an Advanced Care Directive for you or for a loved one.
Friends, I also posted that link in the chat box if you want to go ahead and copy and paste it to your website or to just a Word document for later as well.
And so as I was talking about, needing a higher level of care, and these are for folks that are now living with advanced or terminal illness, and they're no longer doing any kind of treatments. They're not doing radiation, dialysis, or any of that anymore. Now the focus is really on comfort-directed care, and that is called hospice care. And oftentimes people will also call it comfort care as well. But, a primary care physician will normally give their best guesstimate on a patient living for 6 months or less. And again, the earlier, the better. I think the longest patient that we had on hospice was 7 years. And how that happens is they come on hospice, we will give them that compassionate, really intentionally loving care for whatever number of months, and then they graduate because they get better and then they don't need us. And then maybe later on down the road, they come back on services again, and that may go on and off and on and off. It could be for months, it could be for years. But what is the beautiful thing about it is that in all the time that they're with us, we're able to give them that type of compassionate, loving care that really lifts up their life and makes it meaningful all the way to their last breath. And that happens for the family as well. And really, our biggest work has a lot to do with the families, because they need to get prepared and ready for the imminent loss of their loved one, and many are not able to do that. And that's why I often relate this to a level of service, a class of service. So let's just say all of us are going to heaven. Some will go at 2 p.m., some will go at 6 p.m. Make no mistake, we're all going to take that flight, but we're going to take it at whatever time we're going to take it. Anybody that is on hospice care is going to go directly to the first class cabin. And the reason they're going to go there is because that's where all the comfort resides, all the services there. Everybody that's in first class is going to get the best comfort care there is. And everybody else, for whatever reason, when they board the plane, if they didn't get hospice care, they won't go to the coach part of the plane. They, in fact, board the plane from the belly of the plane, from the baggage side of the plane. And the reason that they are going there is because without hospice, it is truly the roughest, toughest, coldest ride all the way to the end. And the family is in there too. So once the person gets there to the bridge of heaven and the patient crosses over, the rest of the family comes back on that very horrible ride and returns back many times in just tons of pieces, where they are unable to reconcile all of that again to face life without their loved one. And that's why I say earlier is better. The support is there for the entire family, and why not take it?
Thank you, Lonnie, for sharing that analogy. I always love hearing it. We've heard it a few times here at Talk Story. Dr. Hannah, I know that when we talk about serious illness, a lot of times we think of, the older, our tutus and our moms or dads as we get older in life, but we know that serious illness doesn't have any age. So are there more challenges possibly for children or for teens who are living with a serious illness? Are they battling depression, anxiety, maybe in the area of physical, cognitive, social, emotional? What types of effects are on the teens and the children?
Sure, I believe that they share. So when we think about adolescents, youth, kids, and adults, they share the same, just essential things that are kind of going on. So a lot of the same issues that are things like, dealing with developmental milestones and just basically growing up. I mean, how many of you have teens or have raised teens? It is a very challenging and difficult situation. They're dealing with milestones that are, like body image, looking at more risky behaviors. We're all know how challenging it is to raise, teenagers or be a teenager. I've also worked with parents who have very young children who are dealing with serious illness. And the unfortunate thing sometimes is the kids appear to be very strong and resilient. And I think a lot of it has to do with helping their parents really dealing with the possible loss of their child.
That is so interesting to hear that the child is actually more resilient. So, taking a look at the parents and as the caregivers of their child, what type of toll could be taken on, the parent as a caregiver, but also a parent in this, different role?
So for caregiving, and when you think about it, it's the same like having like an adult,
Mhm.
or a child. You have the same types of things. Obviously, it's going to be making sure, that mom or dad is taking that time to do some self care as well. But it's definitely going to be challenging. And when you think about it, being a parent myself, if there is a diagnosis my child has, it's so devastating and really difficult to grasp and take care of.
Definitely. So definitely goes back to self-care and just, getting that support um, during those times as well. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the next slide, which is a brain teaser. All right. So I know in the depths of us talking about a lot of serious issues that brain teaser is going to come up, but we definitely just want to hear your feedback. And the question up on the screen is, how is palliative care and hospice care the same? Both, oh, I apologize for that. Let me just take that bell off. How is palliative care and hospice care the same? Both relieve suffering, both can be delivered in the patient's home, both improves the quality of life for their patients and their families, or all of the above. Oh, sorry about that. I didn't even launch it. It is launched on your screen now. How is palliative care and hospice care the same? Feel free to click on the answer that you feel is best. For those of you watching on Facebook Live, mahalo for joining us yet again. If you would like to engage in our polls, feel free to put your answer right in that comment box. Everyone is welcome to the Fully Engaged Zoom presentation next month as well, February 10th at 10. You can email me at lopez@hawaiicarechoices.org, or you can visit our website, hawaiicarechoices.org. All right, I'm going to end the poll right here and share results. 100% of you said all of the above. Wonderful. Thank you so much again for engaging in our polls. And I'm going to take it back over to Lonnie.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I have another question for Dr. Hannah. So, when people are dealing with serious illness or chronic illness, how do you encourage them to get the help or to accept the help, particularly if they're dealing with a lot of sadness, they're for the caregiver, anticipatory grief, they don't really want to talk about it, or they'll say, oh no, I don't need any of that kind of help. In your experience, how have you been able to help them open up to get some help?
I think one of the biggest things when we think about therapy in general, what makes it really work well is the ability for the person who's receiving the information to just listen. Not about really speaking to or telling or recommending, but I'd like to open it up and just sort of listen to them and see what they're going to, and see what's going on, see how you can be of help. The other thing too that I see as very pivotal or essential when you're talking about these types of things is, providing that education that they need.
Mm-hmm.
Educating them about what's going on, what to expect, so that they're not feeling like, oh my God, I'm feeling this way, that's so horrible. It really normalizes what they're going through. So the two things that I would say focusing on before you can even pose the question is listening, having that listening ear, reflective listening, whatever, tools you need to utilize. And then secondly is education.
That makes sense. That makes sense. It definitely does help reduce their anxiety quite a bit as well. That's great. Thank you. Looking back here on oftentimes when there are services, many people will say, oh, well, I can't do any of those services. We just couldn't afford it. So for the most part, anybody that has Medicare, hospice at home is covered 100% by that. Anybody that has that needs palliative care, there could be a copay, but many of our patients also have double coverage with either Medicare and Medicaid, or or Akamai Plus or anything else would normally allow them to receive any of these services. And when there is a double insurance coverage, there's normally no copay. But if there is a copay, it would be very typical to have a similar copay as when they would visit their oncologist or any of their specialists, because palliative care is considered specialized care for sure. And what's really good is the very robust program that is provided by hospice is covered 100% at home for those who have Medicare or basically any insurance coverages in addition to the VA as well.
Right. Thank you. I just want to say thank you so much, everyone, for joining in our talk story that concludes the secrets of palliative care. So thank you so much, Alani, for sharing those and ways that it can help and the resources out there to support our community. If you have any questions, please feel free to call your physician or ask us about palliative or hospice care by calling us directly, 969-1733. We're open Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4 p.m. Or you can email us, care@hawaiicarechoices.org if you have any questions. You can also find a lot of information on our website, hawaiicarechoices.org. Thank you so much to our audience listening in today. For a special mahalo to our guest, Dr. Hannah, for your valued time and helpful perspectives, on today's talk story about mental health and depression and anxiety. We are just so thankful that you are a resource in our community. Friends, if you have a specific question about you or your loved one's situation, again, reach out to us. We have a wonderful, helpful team standing by to answer your questions. Our hope is that you receive the right care at the right time. For those of you joining us on Zoom, there will be a quick survey that will pop up on your screen soon. Please make the best selection for all 6 questions and then click the submit button below. This is not like our brain teasers. These answers will not be shared and they are anonymous. We would just love to get your feedback on our presentation today to allow us to gain a better understanding of how to best serve our community with presentations like these in the future. And I always say, Lani and I do take a look at them. So thank you all for your feedback in the past. For those of you on Facebook, please send your thumbs up, your hearts. If you enjoyed this presentation, send a mahalo to our special guest, Dr. Hannah or Lani. Everyone is invited to the Fully Engaged Zoom presentation next month, February 10th at 10 a.m. Again, on Facebook Live and on Zoom. Visit our website, www.hawaiicarechoices.org events page, and you can sign up for our Fully Engaged Zoom presentation. All right, so this survey should be popping up on your screen right now for those of you on Zoom. Dr. Hannah, again, mahalo for giving us your just valuable insights. We're so thankful that you took your time out of your busy schedule to join us. While our participants are doing their surveys, do you have any final tips for our audience, just for overall self-care?
It's just kind of remembering that mental health takes into account really emotional, psychological, and your just social well-being. So it's essential to really take care of your health, not necessarily only your physical health, but looking at ways of improving how you think, feel, and act, so that you're better able to respond to things. And leaving you with this thought is understanding that self-care is not only a luxury instead of a need. We got to remind ourselves that it's necessary and something that everyone needs daily, not to just feel stressed, but making it a part of your daily routine. Mahalo.
Mahalo so much. It truly was just a great way to start off our 2023. Lani, are there any last comments that you would like to say to our audience?
Yes, I wanted to mention that for anybody that is on hospice care, once the loved one passes, we do provide 13 months of bereavement support to the family. And we also provide community support for anyone that maybe isn't on any of our programs, but requires some help with regard to grief support. And all they need to do is to go to our website, hawaiicarechoices.org/bereavement, and get information, or they could even send an email directly to our bereavement counselor. And that email is bereavement@hawaiicarechoices.org to register for any of our online classes or also in-person events that we have to help families dealing with grief, and to know that you're not alone and that we are there to continue to help everyone. And I'd also like to really thank Dr. Hannah for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about what your organization mission is?
Sure. The Big Island Substance Abuse Council has been on Hawaii Island since 1964, and our mission is really helping individuals reclaim their lives from the devastation of substance use and mental health.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I want to know, do you have groups of veterans that you serve either individually or separately?
Yes, of course we do.
Okay, so I will definitely text you on the side to get information on that, because we would love to provide information like I have shared with you, with everyone here today, to particularly honor our veterans, because that's a specific area within our program overview that we really want to make extra effort on. So we'd love to collaborate with you if that's possible,
Oh,
and
yes,
really
most
serve
definitely.
your veterans.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you again, everyone.
All right.
Hello.
Thank you so much, everyone. Again, if you benefited from this presentation, let your friends and family know. We will see you February 10th at 10 o'clock on Facebook Live and right here on Zoom. Aloha.
Aloha. Ahui.
Ahui.
Ahui ho.